Alright, let's talk about it. So this is the last episode of the Jim Carrey-less cash grab movies. The first one we did was obviously Ace Ventura Jr., then we did Dumb and Dumberer, and now we're here at easily the worst one. We're talking about Son of the Mask.
Son of the Mask.
I remember hearing about how bad this movie was back in the day when it was first released, and I never saw it. I saw advertisements for it, but I never saw it. And I was like, man, ever since I started doing movie reviews, I was like, you know, maybe someday we'll actually end up looking at it and I can do a video talking about it. Here we are. Finally get to check this one off the bucket list. Finally get to talk about the shitty sequel to The Mask that doesn't even have Jim Carrey. So where to even start? We could talk about how there was going to be a sequel to The Mask with Jim Carrey, but that didn't end up happening because Jim Carrey wasn't pleased with Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. And there was even a huge contest in a Nintendo magazine for someone to be a cameo in the movie. And the winner of that contest was instead given a bunch of consolation prizes. Also another interesting bit of trivia in that the teaser trailer for this movie was released in front of the Rings. Could you imagine going to a midnight screening of Lord of the Rings and one of the trailers you get is this? As the years go by, they keep reworking a bunch of different scripts, and it ends up in the hands of Jamie Kennedy and Alan Cumming and the director of Cats and Dogs. Speaking of which, apparently they're trying to make Cats and Dogs the next, they're trying to make that the next Air Buddies movies, as in, there's going to be a bunch of straight-to-video sequels that nobody's going to watch.
Cats and Dogs 3. Paws Unite.
Cats and Dogs 3. I don't even remember Cats and Dogs 2. How is there a Cats and Dogs 3? So, the beginning of the movie is the only time we're in Edge City from the first Mask movie, and we also see Ben Stein, the guy who was the mask expert and told Jim Carrey about how the mask may have had connections to Loki. That's where it got its power from. Well, they decided to take that one little bit of dialogue.
Okay, you said Loki was a night god. Maybe it only works at night.
That was a possible explanation for what the hell was even going on. It wasn't even definitive. It was just oh, well, that might be why this is happening. It was never really clear. It was more vague and up to interpretation. They decided to take that little bit of dialogue from the first one and they just made it the ultimate story of the movie because the movie begins with Ben Stein showing a bunch of people around a museum, and he shows a display that has a replica of the mask. It turns out that Loki is actually in the audience, and he's there to try and reclaim his mask, and Loki is not played by Tom Hiddleston, so you can settle down, fangirls. Oh, instead in this movie he was played by Alan. I still can't believe I was in Viva Rock Vegas coming. This is the second movie for the Blockbusters show where Alan Cumming shows up dressed in green face. Why is this a thing? He finds out that this is just a replica, not actually the mask, so he then takes Ben Stein's face off and puts it in the display case, and he shoots a giant cartoonish hole around some security guards, which makes them drop through the floor. And we'll get back to Loki a little bit later, because he does play a crucial part of this film. We then cut over to a completely different town. This time it's Fringe City, and we see a different dog who just so happens to be the exact same breed of dog like Milo in the last movie, except here his name is Otis. That's only a reference that movie nerds like me are going to get. Do they really think that that was some kind of clever joke? It's here where we see the main family of the movie, because the dog is owned by this young couple, Tim and Tanya Avery, and Tim is played by Jamie Kennedy, and he works as I guess he has animation experience, but he works at an animation studio, which looks more like a factory or warehouse, and he dresses up like a giant turtle to entertain kids who make fun of him, and his best friend is Kal Penn, Kumar from Harold and Kumar, and Kumar says, hey, why don't you go talk to the boss if you have such great cartoon ideas? And he goes to the boss, played by Stephen Wright. I don't know how they got him, but Tim is, a spineless loser, just like Stanley Ipkiss was in the first one, and he goes to the boss to try and pitch his stellar cartoon ideas, and he freezes, and the boss is like, get back to me later. Yeah, Tim wants to move up in the world when it comes to his job, He says he has great cartoon ideas, but he clearly doesn't have anything because he just freezes right then and there. So yeah, I guess that was supposed to be some kind of important thing to the story, even though it's not really that crucial. It seems that Tim's luck is about to change because the office is going to have this big Halloween costume party, and he doesn't have anything to wear, so his wife just suggests wearing the mask that the dog found. And when he goes, oh, he puts on the mask and he turns into this horribly unfunny caricature of, I guess, Jamie Kennedy trying to replicate Jim Carrey's version of the mask. But God, is it awful.
Where did the wife put that invitation?
ID, not IV.
Oh, remember how in the first movie, there was the scene in the nightclub where Jim Carrey, gets the band to play that, that big band jazz song and he dances with Cameron Diaz? Well, there's a dance song sequence in this one, and it's Jamie Kennedy doing a bunch of crappy remixes.
Just too good to be true, can't take my eyes off you.
All in the way that I stare, no one else who can compare.
I love you, baby. I love you, baby. Hands in the air, if it's fine, alright. I need you, baby. Okay.
The only reason that scene happened in the movie was because the director was like, hey, Jamie Kennedy's kind of known for doing, comedy rap. Let's give him an actual full song sequence in the movie. That's a good idea. The next day, Tim goes to his boss, and his boss is like, hey, that character you were playing last night at the party, that's such a great character. We should make that into a show. That'll be great. But what Tim then realizes is that that night he made love to his wife while wearing the mask, and this is where the baby portion of the movie is about to come in. And there's apparently a deleted scene where they actually show green mask sperm. I'm so glad that the version of the movie I watched did not have that. Then get a pregnancy montage where it shows them getting ready to have the baby, and a bunch of weird stuff happens, like the wife throws up bubbles and she eats silly string off crackers. 10 months later, we then get Avery, who is born into the world, and the dog gets jealous that the baby is getting so much attention, and that brings up one of the many different conflicts and subplots this movie has trying to fight over the audience's attention. Before we talk about that, which is sort of the main crux of the movie, we have to talk about the Loki subplot because it eventually comes in later. Loki, played by Alan Cumming, is sent to Earth by his dad, Odin, played by the late great Bob Hoskins. He tells him, the mask is going around and causing mischief all around the world and you need to stop it. While we get scenes of Tim and his family, we're also interjected with scenes of Loki going from different house to different house of babies that were born at the time to try and find this son of the mask. And it's all just a bunch of Alan Cumming in silly looking costumes. And so since the baby is the son of the mask, the baby is just naturally born with the mask's powers and cartoonish abilities. So this baby can do things like blow its head up like a balloon, speak cognitive English when it's convenient and funny for him, and it can reenact Warner Brothers cartoons like that. Which one about the CGI in the original mask? It still holds up surprisingly well for a '94 movie. This movie came out in 2005. And it came out 2 years after Lord of the Rings, and the CG in this has not aged well at all. It seems that only Tim, Jamie Kennedy, is able to see the baby doing all this crazy shit, and he doesn't really do it around the mom. And I guess the reasoning is because Tim is too busy working on his cartoon, which he has no ideas for. Like, I love that. He's like, oh, I have so many good ideas, and, he goes to the boss and he has none. And then even when they have the idea of making a cartoon about the masked character, after 9 months of, waiting for his kid to be born, he still doesn't have anything. For an entire week straight, Tanya's going to be out of town on business, so it's just going to be Tim, the dog, and the baby. So while Tim is trying to work on his cartoon and is just plops his kid in front of the TV, kid ends up watching a bunch of old school cartoons like that one cartoon about the frog wearing the top hat and cane that dances and sings and makes the guy look like a crazy idiot. The baby decides he's going to do that, and if anything amazing came out of this movie, it's the image of Jamie Kennedy locked up in a green screen insane asylum. Like it's a sequel to The Amazing Bulk. I will admit, if they ever want to make an Amazing Bulk 2 and they want that to be in there, I would be so on board. While the baby is doing that, the dog then puts the mask on, just like the dog did in the last one, except Here it's way more horrifying, and they tried to give him like this Muttley from what's that show? Wacky Racers. Like he does the like laugh every time, and the dog CG is just as terrifying as the CG on the baby. Like it's just this really creepy looking, grotesque, like disconnected jaw. Like the head is massive on the dog body. It's really just unsettling. It's creepy as hell. Since we're ripping off Warner Brothers cartoons, the dog basically wants to pull a Wile E. Coyote and destroy the baby so that way he's the center of attention again. And just like in Wile E. Coyote cartoons, he comes up with these big elaborate plans with explosives and stuff that end up backfiring on him while the baby is completely unscathed. The next day, all this then plays out. The baby tries to make people think that Tim is crazy because he sees him dancing around like the frog in the cartoons, and he flails him around like Bam Bam in Flintstones. The dog tries to kill the baby, but the baby is completely unscathed while the dog gets horribly mangled and beaten up like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. And then eventually this is when Loki shows up, because Loki sees that the baby has the mask's powers. And from there, Loki tries to get his hands on the baby, but the baby ends up bashing him up pretty badly. And for no reason, Odin then decides to take Loki's powers away, even though Loki is like, you know, because he possesses Jamie Kennedy, and he's like, Dad, Odin, look, you're holding the baby. You have the baby right then and there. And Odin just takes his powers away. And you think that's going to be some kind of important thing to the story. It really isn't, because in the next scene, he gives him his powers back. Admittedly, on a time limit, like for just a couple of hours. But it's like, why even have him take his powers away? What was the point of that? That was like, it was not even, you're going to wrap it up in the next scene. That is a non-conflict. I know I haven't really touched on it throughout this entire review so far, but I'm just going to say this right now. Who's the bitch over at New Line Cinema that was like, hey, we can't get Jim Carrey. You know who we should get to replace him as the main character? Let's get the dude from Malibu's Most Wanted. Because let me tell you, Jamie Kennedy sucks in this movie. Only two movies that I remember him being good in was he was good in Scream, and he was actually pretty funny as the evil ice cream man from Max Keeble's Big Move. But other than that, he is terrible, and this movie basically killed his career. Like, he plays every scene like a 6-year-old. It's one of those movies where I guarantee you everyone on set was told, just mug, just act as crazy and silly as possible. And even with that direction, Jamie Kennedy wasn't good. Like, as the Mask, he's not very charismatic. And he's not even wearing the mask for that long in the movie. He only wears it like twice. Compare this to the first Mask movie, where Stanley Ipkiss, Jim Carrey's character, yeah, he was a spineless loser who let people walk all over him. But you know what? There was actually a part of you that found him charming, because he was a genuinely good guy who you wanted to see come out on top, get the girl, and actually find a new sense of confidence. And The Mask actually brought that out in him. And Jim Carrey's performances as the, you know, lovable loser, the endearing character of Stanley, as well as the funny, over-the-top character of The Mask, which gave Jim Carrey the perfect amount of time to, you know, do his thing, which, you know, was really funny. It was a perfect combination. But this movie, Jamie Kennedy just sucks all around. And it's funny, because years after this movie came out, Jamie Kennedy then made a documentary called Heckler, or Heckled, or something like that. And the movie, the first half of it is about, you know, being a comedian and having to deal with people that make fun of you. And then halfway through the movie, it just becomes about him being upset that people didn't like Son of the Mask.
How come why do you care what this guy said? Who is this guy?
Everybody has an opinion. The internet is the equivalent of writing something on the bathroom wall. Anyone can just put up anything. And so now this guy, 1 million or 2 million people are going to see that, and I'm the piece of shit.
There's no point in looking at these stupid things.
Even parts where he sits down with movie critics, and like everyone except for one guy is totally reasonable. Like everyone's just like, just didn't think it was a very good movie.
This is what I write. I have the control over it that way. That's the beauty. And I get to sit here and write it and piss off people like you. It's fantastic. I love every second of it.
That guy has to either be a living cartoon villain, the world's greatest troll, or a paid actor who they just said, hey, pretend to be a movie critic, and you're like, you're supposed to be a bad guy, because apparently any form of criticism towards shitty movies like Son of the Mask is completely invalid, at least in the eyes of the now irrelevant Jamie Kennedy. Anyway, let's just wrap up the movie and get this over with. So, the baby and Tim then have a bonding moment later that night, watching cartoons together. Then Loki gets his powers back from Odin. He then tells Tim, hey, give me the mask within the hour or I'm going to keep your baby forever, as he then flies away. I should probably bring this up. Loki turns a nosy neighbor's head into a giant nose, and they literally make the pun, nosy neighbors. Dog has the mask, and the dog is off somewhere with the mask. Then Tanya shows up after her business week, and she sees all this crazy shit going on, and Tim's like, it all makes sense soon enough. Come on, we gotta go get the dog, we gotta go get the mask, and we gotta give it back to Loki. They give the mask to Loki, but he's going to keep the baby because he actually likes spending time with the baby because it has his powers. And then that's followed by a nut joke because the dog bites him in the nuts and then his eyes bug out from all the way across the planet. We then get, I guess, what was supposed to be an awesome chase sequence with awesome effects, but really, again, it's just really dated 2005 CG. After the chase scene, we then get a really lame fight scene with really lame jokes, including a fart joke, because of course, shitty family movies have to have at least one fart joke in the movie, and there you go. Then again, do we expect anything different from the same movie, where a baby pisses 5 streams of piss, and then pisses a giant stream of piss like a fireman's hose in Jamie Kennedy's face? And then they do that thing that you see in a lot of movies like this where it's, let's let the baby choose. Who do you want to be with? Do you want to be with your family or do you want to be with the ever fun Loki? And the baby, of course, goes with Jamie Kennedy because, he finally accepts his father. And he tries to destroy them with a giant hammer, but then the time limit on his power usage runs out. He's then scolded by his father, who comes to him in person. And then Tim gives them a speech about what it's like to be a father and son, it's just weird because it's like, they're gods. Why are they listening to him? But, he said something really profound about, family should stick together and all that kind of stuff. You guys have all eternity together. You guys should try and make it work. You give him the mask, they float up back into the sky, and then the movie ends with, Tim finally got his show off the ground, and he made a cartoon about a dog and baby trying to fight over the father/husband of the family's attention. They turned this little wacky romp that they've been through into a show. And they hint that there's going to be a sequel because Tanya's pregnant again, so there's going to be another one. Except there wasn't, because this movie failed with critics and failed at the box office. That says something. Like Dumb and Dumber somehow did surprisingly well at the box office, even though it wasn't very good. This movie, everyone looked at it and went, no. Because it didn't do well at the box office, and it was hated by critics and audiences back in the day. It's still very disliked. I'm more than positive it's on IMDb's top 100 worst movies list. It's like, this movie really sucked. Going into it, I expected it to be bad, but oh my god, the CG in this is awful. The acting is incredibly just hammy and mugging and over the top when it doesn't need to be. Like, go back to the first movie again. Go back to the original Mask. That movie had a really good balance of comedy, and it also had a really good serious balance to it as well. There were times where they would slow down and they would actually treat things seriously. Story isn't very good. Again, I don't know why they went with Loki being the main villain. Like, I don't know. Like, just because of a throwaway line in the first movie, you have to make Loki all of a sudden a main character in this movie because you had nothing else to work with. And, it's just a generic, family should stick together lesson stapled on top of just replications of, like, 7-minute cartoons that you could just be watching instead. Just look up those old Looney Tunes cartoons that are, like, trying to parody, like, the Roadrunner or the one with the Michigan J Frog. Just watch those because they're shorter and they're funnier than this movie is. Now we have to decide which one of these is the worst Jim Carrey-less cash grab movie, and, I'm just gonna say, yeah, Son of the Mask is the worst. It's easily the worst one. I was expecting it to be bad, but it somehow surpassed my expectations of awful. In terms of best, I'm gonna cheat, and even though me and Chris T. Ian did this for a video, I'm gonna say Evan Almighty is probably the best one. Not because Evan Almighty is very good, but it at least had the same people from the first one, so it had the same director. Steve Carell came back. It also had Morgan Freeman again, so it's like, it actually felt more like a legitimate sequel or spin-off or whatever than any of the other ones. In terms of the other two, how would I rank them? Let's see. Dumb and Dumber, as bad as it was, actually had someone that looked like Jim Carrey. And Ace Ventura Jr. was just a crappy straight-to-video, straight-to-TV sequel that had a kid that was trying way too hard to be Jim Carrey, even though he could not replicate any of his mannerisms. Not to say that the guy playing Lloyd in Dumb and Dumber did, but he at least looked like Jim Carrey. So there was just that tiny, tiny bit of slack versus Ace Ventura Jr. So yeah, my official ranking is Evan Almighty is the best of these, and then Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura Jr., and then Son of the Mask is down at the bottom. So that wraps up the summer of Jim Carrey-less cash-in movies for the summer. Look forward to more Blockbusters content. We have 3 new videos coming up in September. We're going to be doing 2 movie reviews, and then we're going to experiment with some commentary-style content, so look forward to that. I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and yeah, Son of the Mask sucks.
I'm the god of friggin' mischief. What did you expect?